Hey everybody, as I mentioned in a previous update video, I closed the viewer survey for 2015 on Sunday, and I started putting together a summary of those results. So like I've done before, I'm going to just go ahead and go through the results of the survey with you guys and give you some insights on what I might be changing up and what I might not be changing up and so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and start with the first question of how long people have been following my channel. Pretty even spread with that one. So I feel like we got some good results with this one. We got a wide variety of perspectives, so that's good. The vast majority of you do watch my reviews, MTOs, and Q&A videos. And the How to Fails, oddly enough, have more viewership than the LPs and the tabletop videos. Of course, the tabletop videos are brand new and they're kind of niche, so I don't really expect them to have huge viewership, at least not yet anyway. So this is pretty much what I expected on that. I'm actually kind of surprised the How to Fail videos have more viewership than the LPs and playthroughs, though. Maybe because I haven't done LPs in quite a while, just because of lack of time. But if I ever do actually get time to mess around with the LPs and playthroughs again, then I will certainly continue doing so. As far as what you guys want me to produce more of, obviously reviews and MTOs are the top of the list. And not very many of you want me to continue producing How to Fail videos. Usually How to Fail videos are byproducts, actually. I just want to make that very clear to you guys. Usually a How to Fail video comes around when I'm just recording footage for an upcoming review or something anyway, and I happen to have a clip where I fail in a certain manner, and they're just something I throw up on the channel really as bonus content. Obviously you don't have to watch them if you don't want to, and I don't know why people complain about them if they don't watch them anyway. So moving on, there was a good chunk of you who want me to do more Q&As. Obviously I need questions to do Q&As, so you got to keep that in mind. If I don't have enough questions to do a Q&A video, I can't do the video, so make sure to keep asking questions on those. And the LPs and playthroughs also had a decent chunk of you wanting more of them. I understand that, but again, it's a matter of having the time to do so. Moving on to the next thing, which is about the new Tabletop series, there weren't that many responses that I got to it that were anything more than either haven't watched it yet, didn't know it was there, no comment, or that you enjoyed it, or it's just not really your thing. A lot of you did respond that tabletop games really aren't your thing. I understand that. They're not for everyone. Although I still firmly believe that there is a tabletop RPG out there for everyone, regardless of who you are, regardless of whether or not you actually enjoy tabletop RPGs, or even just board games or card games in general. But there were a few responses that included some suggestions on how I could improve things. Things like structuring the videos better. Admittedly, the D&D video was rather rambly, and it really was just more of me going into why I don't like the system than actually talking about the system. I may do a follow-up video that actually talks more about the system itself, but that was really a direct follow-up to the statement I made in the first episode of the series where I mentioned that I really don't like Dungeons & Dragons, and that was just more to clarify that, so maybe we'll expand upon that in the future. There were a few suggestions for games I can cover, things that I've really talked about already, or at least mentioned, like Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, Ironclaw and Jadeclaw, World of Darkness, D&D, once again. And the suggestion was that I do full episodes just dedicated to talking about the system, how it actually works, giving a general overview of versions, things like that. And that's actually what I mentioned in the update video about the Tabletop series that I just put out over the weekend. But I just wanted to get an idea of what you guys want to see from the series, and I didn't really get all that many responses to that video that were actually helpful, so that is kind of problematic. But anyway, the other suggestions were the problem of having really bad camera work in the first episode, which is now fixed because I'm using Tabletop Simulator. And speaking of Tabletop Simulator, one suggestion was to do full tabletop games with friends through Tabletop Sim. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. It would just depend on when I can get a group together to actually mess around with stuff. But if I can manage it, I will consider doing it. The final suggestion I got for the Tabletop series was to do a sort of example playthrough or tutorial on how to actually go through something. I wasn't really given specifics on that, so if you have any ideas for how to expand upon this particular idea, because just saying tutorial or example playthrough doesn't really give me too much to go on. Do you mean a specific game? Do you mean just in general? I mean, it can be all sorts of different things. So a bit more specificity would be great in that particular regard. Moving on to the next question about any video types you would like me to add to the channel. A lot of people took that as an opportunity to request reviews, and most of the reviews requested are already on the list and have been for some time. Although I did get a couple of amusing ones, like more stuff that I actually like playing, which really depends more on what I happen to have installed at the time and what I'm just working on, because it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not I'm going to be able to enjoy a given game. And if I don't enjoy it, and I don't enjoy several games that I happen to have installed and I'm working on at any given point, then it might come across as I'm just constantly reviewing things I really don't like playing, and it may just be because that's what I happen to have installed at that particular moment. So it's more of a luck of the draw kind of thing. Same thing goes for the request of less strategy games, which I find amusing because I really don't review all that many strategy games. I have a feeling this was pretty much directed exclusively at Command & Conquer Month, but oh well. A request for more indie titles, again, a luck of the draw kind of thing. A request for more Diablo clones, partly because they like seeing me suffer, and partly because they think I write the whole genre off. I do write that whole genre off, because I have played enough of the games in that genre to know that that playstyle does absolutely nothing for me except irritate me. Which is of course why I very rarely do reviews of Diablo clones. The other interesting request with that was to not do a review of Final Fantasy VII. Well, actually one of you guys ended up sending me a copy of that several years ago, and I've just never really gotten around to finishing it up for reviewing, and you guys know how I do things when it comes to being sent games to take a look at. I do take a look at them, and I do make a video on them, whether it be an MTO, whether it be what ended up being a Mystified Monday kind of thing, or whether it be a full-on review. So the request of not doing Final Fantasy VII would actually not be able to be fulfilled at this point. But whether or not it's a full review, well, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Anyway, moving on to other things that you would like me to do. There were several people who said videos on mods and movie reviews. Now, I've posed the question of movie reviews to you guys in the past, and the response was overwhelmingly negative toward the idea of doing movie reviews. And honestly, while I do have a basic understanding of most of what goes into making a movie, things like cinematography, things like the editing process and what kind of editing techniques there are and such like that, it's not really enough to do full-on movie reviews. So at most, a video on a movie would basically just be an MTO, and the same pretty much goes for videos on mods. I mean, I'm not really that involved in the mod scene anymore. I'm just a lot more concerned with how a game is in its vanilla state than what it would be like with mods attached. And while mods are kind of a must for certain games like, say, whatever Bethesda craps out these days, or the Mountain Blade series or something like that, more often than not, there's really just not that many mods that catch my eye anymore. And when they do catch my eye, it's probably something for a fairly old game, for example, Pirates, Vikings, and Knights 2. And while I did play that back in the day, I'm pretty sure there's not much of a player base for it these days, so it would be kind of pointless to take a look at something like that. But we'll see. Never say never with regards to mod videos. It might happen eventually, but it would probably be fairly few and far between. As far as other stuff you would like me to add to the channel, there's stuff on my various peeves with regards to gaming trends, things like bullet sponge enemies, or the video I did on whatever game does the taking your gear away trope and so on and so forth. I might do more of that sort of thing in the future. We'll just have to wait and see. And part of the wait and see bit comes from the fact that this sort of thing just kind of pops into my head all of a sudden, and I just feel like I have to do a video on it. I got a request to do unboxing videos, which I'm kind of baffled by, considering that this is primarily a PC gaming channel. And as you guys know, generally speaking, I get my games on Steam or GOG or something like that. There's no box to open, and I don't really get all that much gear, and when I do get it, it's very few and far between, so I don't really feel the need to do unboxing videos. Or when I decide on doing an unboxing, it's because, oh, I want to immediately get this thing in action, as opposed to actually make a video showing you what's in the box and so on and so forth. Anyway, other ideas include things like videos on gaming news. Well, there's plenty of other sources for that, and I don't really keep up on the gaming news as much as I would like anyway, and by the time I would be able to put out a video on it, tons of other people would have put out videos on it, so it just kind of defeats the point. There were several requests to do top 10 lists, and this is something I have deliberately avoided during the entirety of making videos on the channel, because I've said this many times before, in fact. The list would probably change, which kinda defeats the point of a top 10 list, don't you think? That and it feels really clickbaity. I really don't like clickbait. There were also two requests that kind of go hand in hand. One of them was an examination of various game design elements, and the other one was more literature analysis applied to video games, which I'm basically just treating as academic stuff. I generally try to keep things pretty down to earth in my videos, but if there's something that really is interesting that I would like to actually cover and that falls into those purviews, I might actually do a video on that. But it would take a pretty significant amount of inspiration to feel like doing something like that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but if it does happen, it would probably be pretty few and far between. Other ideas include going over hidden gems, which I kind of do anyway when it comes to reviews. It just depends on whether or not you watch them. And collaboration videos, like co-op reviews and such like that. The problem with doing something like a co-op review would actually be, how do you even do something like that? I'm not entirely sure myself. More importantly, who would I be collaborating with? I've entertained the idea of doing collaborations with GGG Man at some point, but we can rarely find time to communicate simply because he lives in Australia and I live in the US. There's a huge time difference there. Now, I did do a co-op Let's Play with Sooth at one point, but unfortunately he took down all the videos for that. I'm still not entirely sure why. I guess he just lost them or something. But we attempted to do a co-op Let's Play of Splinter Cell Chaos Theory and sucked at it, so it ended up being more of a Let's Fail series, but I digress. Something like that could happen, but again, that would come down to time and whether or not I could find someone to do it with. The last couple of video ideas were rather amusing to me, and I know that they were pretty much jokes. The first of them is how not to fuck up games, and the second one is why I'm inferior to MD Chaos, which is both amusing and brings up the very last suggestion, which is subscriber interactions and events. Things like just doing gaming sessions with you guys, which that would really depend on when I'm able to do something like that and whether I can organize it. It would just be kind of a crapshoot, really. But it's certainly an idea, and I'll keep it in mind. Next up was the question about whether there were things about my videos you would like me to change or improve. First thing was something that popped up a couple of times, which is sound editing and quality issues. I'm not entirely sure what is going on with that. Apparently, in some videos, the sound quality is better than others, and in other videos the sound editing isn't that great. If those of you who were talking about that could send me some examples of where this is a problem, I might be able to do something about it, but I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I do know that the old videos that were on my different mic were pretty terrible, but that's because they were on a different, pretty low quality mic, and now I've got a pretty good quality mic. It's just that I don't necessarily have the sound mixing down as well as I probably could, but I'm not an audio guy, so unfortunately that's not really my realm of expertise. I do what I can with it at least, but I'll see what I can do. One person expressed distaste with number scores. My scores really aren't necessarily scores, if that makes sense. I made a video on this. They're really more summaries. They're just one number summaries for descriptive text. And apparently nobody watches that video, so they don't actually understand the descriptive text. So maybe I need to do something to fix that up, but we'll see. Somebody requested a sort of summary diagram at the end of a video. I'm not entirely sure what I would be able to do with something like that, but I'll entertain the idea at the very least. If I can figure out a good format for it, maybe. Next up, a couple of people talked about the video time issues, where some of the videos are kind of inconsistent in the amount of time that they take. For example, I might spend 20 minutes ranting about something, whereas when I really enjoyed something, I might only spend 5 to 10 minutes on it. And a lot of that depends on how old the review is, and a lot of it also depends on just what the game does. If there's not that much to talk about, then the video is probably going to be a lot shorter. If there's plenty to talk about, then the video is going to be longer. It's pretty much that simple. Regardless, they're generally a lot more consistent these days than they used to be, so let's put it that way. Unfortunately, apparently for some people, they are too long. Well, unfortunately, this is an instance of damned if I do, damned if I don't. So if I don't go into full depth and the video ends up being really short, then people will be mad at me. If I go into full depth and the video ends up being really long, then other people will be mad at me. It's just kind of a no-win situation, so I just kind of do what I do, and that ends up working out. Luckily, I have gotten a lot more consistent in this particular regard. Someone said I should sing. No, you really don't want to hear me trying to sing. It's terrible. Someone talked about me resizing the 4:3 or 5:4 aspect ratio footage to 16:9 to fit the YouTube viewer, and how that's really more of a personal peeve for them. But I do understand where you're coming from on that. The problem is that this is really more of a personal thing for me as well. I really hate black bars on either side of the screen. It's one of those intangible, irrational things that just bothers me, and I have to fix it. So, sorry about that. I did get a request for Reviews Redux, which is basically me going back to my old videos that were terrible quality and improving the quality, basically re-recording them in my current level of quality. And I've considered doing that, it's just that would take friggin' forever. And more importantly, where would I even begin with that? Would I just start from the beginning and work my way all the way up through modern times, basically? Or would I just do certain videos here and there? It's just kind of a weird process to pick and choose what exactly needed to be reduxed and so on and so forth. So I just haven't really gotten around to doing it yet. But it is an idea I've been entertaining for quite some time, so just understand that it might actually happen. I'm just not sure when. I got a request to redo the score system when it's really, again, not so much a score system as it is a summary system. I guess I need to redo the scale video because apparently nobody watches it, or people who do watch it don't necessarily understand it. Somebody mentioned that the way I talk changed over time, and I don't really understand that other than the fact that I just stopped saying "you know" all the time and stopped going so much. But let me tell you, it was a pain in the ass getting rid of those verbal tics. I did get a couple of requests to expand my vocabulary, which kind of amuses me for a variety of reasons. The first of which being that my vernacular is what I use for these particular videos, which means this is generally the way I talk in normal conversation. If I started using the rather expansive vocabulary I do have, then I'm sure I would get even more people saying I come across as an arrogant asshole, which did come up a few times in the gripes section, so that is something to keep in mind. I generally leave the fancier vocabulary for my writings, not my speech. But we'll see what we can do. Vielleicht soll ich nur auf Deutsch reden, aber... Other things included being less biased, which I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. If you mean, oh, stop hating the games I enjoy, then I can't necessarily do that. I go into every game giving it a fair shake. You know that. If you don't know that, then you've got some pretty significant biases yourself. There are certain genres that I don't like, and I make it very clear that I don't like them, but other than that, it's really on a case-by-case basis. And then there's the one that amuses the hell out of me. Be more cheerful or positive. Let me put it this way, if I actually had a choice in the matter, maybe I would be able to. Anyway, moving on to other questions. The two regarding the beta period of live streaming, beta being in quotes, because I've basically just been dabbling with it. I haven't really gotten too serious about streaming right now, and very few people have actually paid too much attention to it. In fact, the vast majority of responses I got to the question of have you been part of the beta period of live streaming are, wait, you started streaming? Most people just didn't know about it. I've been advertising it through the Steam group as opposed to showing it on the channel just because I want to keep the number of viewers at a relatively low amount until I've got everything sorted out. And with regards to the various criticisms and thoughts on the actual live streaming stuff, one of the concerns was investing too much time into it and it just taking away time from other things. I only do it once a week, and it's only for about 2 or 3 hours. And on top of that, it's generally me messing around with stuff that I'm already working on anyway for reviews and such. And it gives me a chance to interact with the viewers, so that's what I mostly do with the live streaming stuff. I'm well aware I'm not exactly the most flamboyant personality or anything like that, so generally speaking, this is a fairly laid-back stream, but as I saw from some of the responses to this, that does present some problems with regards to entertainment value. I did also see a couple of issues regarding time zones, because you guys are often in different time zones than me, and thus it makes it hard to coordinate exactly when you'd be able to watch something. For example, when I start streaming, usually in Europe, it's already really late at night, so you guys aren't even awake, so it's just kind of a bad time for you guys. But other issues came with regards to people just not knowing the stream was even happening, so more announcements would be useful to people. Somebody suggested I should do more straw polls in the streams, and that's something I'm going to be doing more of as I continue the streaming. Some people have issues with the audio and the video quality. Now, the audio quality, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but the video quality is actually currently out of my control. I do not have any options to give you guys any sort of toggles or anything like that to mess around with the video quality, unfortunately. But apart from what I mentioned already, some people like it, some people don't like it, some people are just kind of ambivalent toward it, and it's understandable. People are going to have different reactions to it. I know I'm not really that big on live streaming myself, honestly. It's just something I decided, hey, why don't I try this out, see how it goes. And if nothing else, it's only once a week at most, so not that big of a deal, really. Moving on to other things, a decent chunk of you guys are in the Steam group, which is pretty helpful for you because you get announcements on the various videos when they're uploaded, or not necessarily exactly when they're uploaded, but at least within a few hours of their upload. And some of you do follow me on Twitter, and I do announcements and such on there as well. But the vast majority of you guys don't seem to really give a crap about either of these, and they're just kind of take it or leave it situations. Others find them useful, and with regards to the Steam Curator page, which is a pretty new thing, most of you don't seem to know it exists. And the rest of you, the majority, either get plenty of use out of it or occasional use out of it. I do only put games in there that have received a 3 out of 5 or higher, so do keep that in mind. Moving on to a set of 3 questions about the Patreon for the channel. The responses I got there actually amuse me because the number of people who say yes to the question of are you or have you been a supporter on Patreon is significantly lower than the people who are saying, oh, it's fine, or I'm not a fan of it, or it could be improved. I mean, that makes it a bit muddier to go through, but at the same time, it's still actually some pretty useful information. The vast majority of the people who responded, about 70%, do not do anything on the Patreon, and a decent chunk of you actually didn't even know it was a thing at all, which actually is kind of impressive to me at this point, but oh well. And with regards to actual feedback on it from the people who either said they're not a fan of it or they think it could be improved, I didn't really get that many responses with it, but the only 2 major responses I got were the fact that there's no real anonymous payment options, and if you're in Europe in particular, there are very limited options for you, and a lot of you aren't necessarily comfortable giving a U.S. company your credit card information and such like that. And I certainly understand where you're coming from on that, but there's not really too much I can do about the way that Patreon processes payments and such like that, so that's not really in my control. I think you understand that, though. The other thing was with regards to backer reward options, and this is something I want to discuss with you guys specifically, because right now I just have a basic tier, which is basically $1 or more gets you access to weekly updates, where I both talk about what happened in the previous week and what is to come in the next week. And currently that's it. Right now the Patreon basically exists as a tip jar, and I'm not entirely sure what I could do to give you guys better rewards and such if you wanted to contribute higher amounts. One of the suggestions was for certain tiers to be able to upgrade the priority of certain review items, but that just kind of defeats the scheduling that goes on in my brain, because some of the reviews I'm actually saving for special occasions, things like the Baldur's Gate series or Planescape Torment or something like that. Those are saved for special occasions. And putting in a tier that, for example, means the next review is going to be whatever game you say, and you decide to say, oh, Baldur's Gate should be the next one, would be just kind of awkward, to say the least. But if we can figure out a system that would actually make sense, then maybe we can do something like that. And of course there's other things we could do as well, but I can't really think of any off the top of my head at this particular moment while I'm recording the video. If you guys have any ideas, feel free to suggest. But But anyway, moving on to the last question, which is really just a general category for whatever the hell you want to throw in there. And a lot of you took that opportunity to just say, hey, thanks for the videos, I really enjoy them, and so on and so forth. And there were so many variations of that I can't actually focus on any specific one, so thank you to all of you who did say that. I'm glad that you find the videos entertaining or informative or whatever you might get out of them that allows you to enjoy them. But there are a couple of gripes that actually amuse the hell out of me. For example, I sound bored on occasion. More often than not, when I sound bored, either I am bored or I'm just really tired. In the particular case of this video, I might sound bored or something in several instances. It's actually about 4 in the morning when I'm recording this, so I'm pretty tired by the time I was putting this together. So bear with me on stuff like that. I put together the videos when I can actually put them together, and sometimes that means pulling a very late night. And then, of course, some games are just really boring, so there's not much I can do about it. There were a couple people being sticklers for semantics, which I'm not really going to go into here. There were at least 1 or 2 saying that I basically come across as an arrogant, cynical sod, which I've already mentioned before, and it actually is kind of amusing because right below that I had somebody saying that I need to stay brutally honest, because it's my thing. I'm brutally honest to a fault. It's something I really can't help because if I try to tone it down, it actually makes me mad at myself. Because while there are very few things I truly despise in this world, one of them is liars. And I have a very German mentality of telling things as they are. If you understand what I'm talking about, then you know I follow the philosophy of say things as they are, and if somebody gets offended, well, that's their own damn problem. And you guys have come to expect that from me, and in fact pretty much demand it from me, so why wouldn't I be brutally honest? If that means I come across as an arrogant asshole, then, well, sorry about that, but that's not the intent. I'm just being brutally honest. Moving on to the other gripes that people had. More Let's Plays and playthroughs, and to finish the ones that I've already started. Well, again, lack of time is the main factor there. I do apologize for that. I have every intention of going back to and finishing those LPs at some point. Just haven't gotten around to it, because I haven't had time. And then I got a request for more videos on new games, which is limited because I really don't have that much disposable income. I quite simply can't afford to pick up all the new games at $60 a pop and do videos on them immediately when they're coming out and such like that. That's why it often takes me weeks, months, or even years to actually get around to reviewing something. And this is actually part of the reason I set up the Patreon, so I could actually get together some funds to spend on stuff for the channel, as opposed to having to wait several months and then just pick something up with whatever disposable income I've saved up over the past couple of months. So don't get me wrong, I certainly understand where you're coming from on wanting more information on new titles so that can help determine your purchasing decisions. But at the same time, there's only so much I can do. That said, while I do try to keep things relatively recent when I can, there's also a ton of value in information on older games too, because some people might be experiencing them for the first time. Some people might be looking into getting this particular older game and not really know much about it, and they're like, oh hey, DW did a video on that, maybe I should check that out and see what he says about it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, to use a metaphor that I bring up all the time. But I digress. Something like doing a lot more new games is really just more of a when I can thing than anything else. And speaking of things when I can, because I have no control over this, be sick less often. Seriously, I have no control over that. I can't determine when I get sick and when I don't get sick. It just happens. But at least I understand that was more of a joke response than anything else. What wasn't a joke response is the person who sent me a wall of text on StarCraft 2 and Overwatch. Just saying, the viewer survey is really not the best place to do that, and besides, I actually don't give a crap about Overwatch anyway. I don't give a crap about most Blizzard titles. They're insanely overrated. But anyway, that is a summarized version of all of the results that I got from the viewer survey this year. Thanks to all of you who responded to the survey. The feedback does definitely help me out and help the channel get better. So throughout the year, I'm going to be taking a look at all the responses that I got here and seeing what exactly I can implement to improve the channel and what exactly I can do to change things that are already implemented and so on and so forth. Thanks again to everybody who responded to the survey. Thank you all for watching the videos, and I will catch you guys in later videos.